I just quote you, Adam, because you said that, and then I want to talk about Manolin also, because you said that the ocean is a $100 trillion opportunity and probably the largest opportunity in your lifetime. And if we have that quote in mind, can we also talk a bit about John, Tony, and when are you coming to Norway to check out some salmon farming?
So I would love to, and I think that should be on my trip list for 2022. That's a good idea. I'll come out to Norway. There, we've invested in a few things because of Norway is the head of ocean like life out there. So I think it's I think the first 10 years of my career were defined by crypto. And I think that but it was overlooked for 8 years. Like it was completely overlooked and underfunded and no one cared. And like, honestly, it was a little depressing at times. Like being completely ignored by the mass market is not the easiest task where everyone goes, are you still doing that Bitcoin thing? And you're like, that hurts. Like, okay, that sucks. But yes, I am. And it's great. And these are the reasons why. Like defending it's so hard defending why you're still in it, right? Because it's a belief, it's a core belief. It becomes a piece of like what you are, and having that like shaken is always a disturbing moment. Now that I've gone through that though, I believe that the next 10 to 20 years will largely be defined by my techniques at innovating in the ocean. And I believe Web3, crypto, it's going to play a fairly large role in that. But I also think that oceans in general is the opportunity. It's 80% of the planet. It's already, if you just measure what it is today, if you measure like ocean salmon farming and shipping and logistics, and like if you just measure the markets that are dependent on oceans today, it's $1 trillion market. But if you believe, like I do, that if people start to invest capital and time in a very specific place, that markets grow, it's $100 trillion market because there's so much yet to be discovered. And that's what I was trying to get across is like, today, yes, it's only $1 trillion market. How ridiculous is that to say? Only $1 trillion market. Like it's a freaking $1 trillion market. What I'm saying is the growth of this, once we figure out how to unlock capital. And by the way, primary reason that capital is not unlocked is always regulatory in every industry. And right now it's because everyone believes the only way that you can build in the ocean is as a nonprofit, essentially, because the ocean is largely a nonprofit. It's the tragedy of the commons. And so we have to solve that. If we solve that, climate change goes away. We live in oceans. It's going to be awesome. And that trash heap goes away. So like, that's my thesis. That's what I'm going for. And that's why I believe it's $100 trillion opportunity, because I believe if you just invest like a tiny amount in ocean-based stuff today, in 20 years, it's worth 100 to 1,000x that, right? Like just own something, do something in the ocean.
Couldn't agree more. And just a couple of key points. I think you need an office in Norway soon, because I still remember I was in Brazil, and because I worked for the Norwegian government in terms of seafood. And I remember having this conversation with a Brazilian guy from the government. And he basically, when I explained how much knowledge Norway has, he was shocked because Brazil didn't even know what's in their ocean, right? Because we track everything from governance, etc. So obviously you can't flip the argument and say that because Norway has a great government, we actually have control over the fjords, right? But I totally get your point. We need to unlock that key, right?
Okay, so let's go one step further. Like, okay, so Norway has those tools, right? They have the tools to be able to measure and check and track. Every other government doesn't. And I'm not even talking about, like, you're thinking US does. US doesn't. Like, in my opinion, US can track winds and like the depths, and that's basically it. And we don't care. And that's my biggest qualm. Like, and I sometimes I have to say things like that just to give a hot take, but it's not a hot take. We're not good at the ocean. Like, we are bad. In fact, our incentive is to dump. Everyone's incentive is to dump their trash into the ocean, because once it's 200 miles offshore, they don't need to care about it. And like, that's the biggest problem. The fact that we have decided, oh, also the law of the sea, it's technically just a random agreement from a bunch of countries that like isn't law. They call it the law of the sea, and it's not. It's just generally agreed upon. And anyone at any time can sort of do whatever they want and just say like, okay, we're breaking the law of the sea, but that was sort of a like handshake deal. And like I wasn't a part of it, but it was like 40 years ago. And it's gone through like 5 iterations, but no one has taken it on again. And maybe my next 20 years is just like defining the law of the sea, right? Like actually making it law and saying, hey, this tragedy of the commons that is our planet, it needs governance. And like, I am king of the ocean. Suddenly I am king of Atlantis. And now everyone knows my goal in life is just to be Aquaman.
But it's so funny because this is turning into an ocean podcast. But just to build on that argument, because imagine, since I worked with this, I know like, okay, so obviously the climate changes the way that inhabitants flows in the water, right? So the problem is that suddenly that your cod is in Russian waters, but it wasn't originally. But because of climate change, people move around, and also animals, right? So like you're saying, you have a lot of zones where you need to have a discussion every year, because suddenly, okay, we don't have enough fish right here. So you need to find an agreement. And this, like you said, goes on every year. So you have the same dance, right? The same song. But someone has to say that, okay, we agree on that. So just as you said, and this is going to be more. And also you see the Brexit and the French are arguing who owns the fish, right? No one owns the fish. It flows in the water.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's the issue.
Adam for ocean.
It's like they're swimming. And which is also why aquaculture is so fascinating though. Because you do own the fish, and you own that plot of land, and you own the like, and so I looked into buying an aquaculture farm at one point, just because I wanted to own a piece of the ocean. Like, this is the only way that the governments are going to allow me to own a piece of the ocean. And so I'm going to do this. I'm going to do what they have allowed and permitted.
And imagine having an incentive to take care of that ocean because you own.
Yeah. And all of a sudden I'm going to optimize and clean. I'm going to optimize because I know that if I sell clean seaweed, clean all this stuff, I'm going to take care of that plot of the ocean. I'm going to be pissed if oil leaks into my plot of ocean. I'm going to be pissed if and you need that. You need to be triggered to be like, this is I own this. Don't leak your oil mine over to my like seaweed facility, because we're trying to make clean products for people to eat. I think I'm excited. Long story short, I think there are great people moving in the movement of going into the ocean. It's still early. I don't think it's not high density, but there's great humans. Also, if you're choosing to jump into the ocean, it's a little against the grain. It's a little bit of and so you had to overcome sort of a social stigma of going into a market that doesn't really exist. It's not really a thing. It's sort of like jumping into crypto from banking. You have to explain to your mom, oh yeah, there's this thing. It's a piece of technology, and yeah, I'm going all in because it's not it banking isn't doing solving the problem. And mom's like, but you're at Goldman Sachs. And then you go, you're right, I am at Goldman Sachs. And then you stay. And that's the biggest problem is the people staying, the talent staying when they should be going.